The glass doors of the small grocery store Greenway Market trembled slightly as Keanu Reeves pushed them open as he walked inside. It was early morning, and the streets of Los Angeles were just beginning to come alive under the warm sun. Keanu, dressed in a black cap, a simple gray t-shirt, and jeans, looked like an ordinary passerby. He liked to walk around and visit unremarkable places without unnecessary publicity. This way he felt a connection with reality, devoid of the pomp and noise of Hollywood fame. Inside the store, the atmosphere was calm, shelves with vegetables, neatly arranged shelves with snacks and drinks. Behind the cash register sat a young woman named Sophia. Judging by her uniform, she was one of the employees here. Friendly, but clearly a little tired, she cast a quick glance at the visitor who entered and, apparently, did not recognize the famous actor in him. Keanu smiled to himself. This was for the best. He could calmly buy some fruit and a bottle of water. At the fruit aisle, he noticed that the selection was not that great: a few apples, a few oranges, and a bunch of bananas. But everything looked fresh, neatly washed. He picked out a few apples, put them in a bag, and as he walked to the checkout, he felt the coziness that small stores in big cities provide. People here seemed to be in no hurry, ready to exchange a few words about the weather or the day's activities in no time. Sophia, holding the receipt tape in her hands, smiled briefly. "Good morning, can I help you with something?" "Yes, good morning," Keanu replied, placing a bag of apples on the counter. "And a bottle of water, please." She quickly scanned the purchase and named the amount. Keanu handed over the bill. "Here you go. You have a great place, I like it." "Thank you." Sophia smiled a little warmer. "I love this job too, even though it's not easy sometimes." He thanked her and took the bag. For a second he considered exchanging a few polite phrases, but decided not to linger and headed for the exit. As soon as he approached the doors, he noticed out of the corner of his eye a dark car approaching the store. Suddenly, Keanu's heart trembled noticeably. Two people in hoods got out of it and quickly headed for the entrance. Intuition told him that something was wrong. He slowed down a little, watching through the glass doors. The two strangers seemed tense by the way they walked. One had his hands in his pockets, the other was looking around. As they walked inside, Keanu noticed their eyes frantically scanning the room, and he felt a sharp pang of alarm. They were unlikely to be just customers. Without saying anything, Keanu pretended to go back to the snack shelf so as not to attract attention. He wanted to understand what these two were planning to do. He didn't want to cause a panic, but a voice inside him was screaming, "This is not a good morning for the store." Sophia was still sitting at the cash register, looking at the reports on the screen. She didn't seem to notice the change in atmosphere. But Keanu could already feel the tension growing. Two men were looking at the cash register, at the girl, at the shelves. One was shorter, with a pale face and a crooked grin. The other was taller, stooped, with a scar on his cheek. They exchanged glances, as if deciding who would make the first move. Keanu pretended to read the ingredients of some candy bar, but he was listening to everything around him. The silence was broken only by the quiet hum of the air conditioner. And then he heard a rustle and a short call. "Hey, girl, open the cash register quickly." Sophia, clearly not understanding at first, turned around and met the cruel gaze of the pale guy. Noticing something flashing in his hands, possibly a knife or an object resembling a weapon, she recoiled, widening her eyes. What's going on?" "Don't ask questions," the stooped man hissed, taking a step closer to the counter. "Give me the money right now! And no nonsense!" Inside the store, the tension was high. Keanu's neck went cold as he realized this was a real holdup. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw another customer, an older woman at the refrigerator. Drop her groceries in fear and freeze, afraid to move. Sophia, pale, reached for the cash register with shaking hands. The younger of the robbers, the pale guy, looked around nervously. "Move, or it will get worse." Keanu's mind raced. Should he intervene or call the police? But there was no time to think. If he didn't do something right now, these people could hurt Sophia. He put the candy bar back on the shelf and quietly approached the cash register, trying not to provoke the bandits with any sudden gestures. But his presence did not escape their gaze. "Hey, who's that guy over there?" the hunched-over man hissed, raising his hand as if defending himself. "Hey, you, calm down and stay put, got it?" Keanu raised his hands to show that he wasn't going to rush. He said calmly and with restraint, "Guys, no need for violence. This is just a modest store. If you want money, well, take it, but don't harm the girl." Sophia cast a helpless glance at Keanu, as if asking if he could really help. The men glanced at each other. The pale boy chuckled. "Wow, we found a hero guy. Okay, get out of here before you get into trouble." But Keanu didn't move. He knew that one mistake could cost people their lives. He had to buy time or distract the robbers until someone from outside or an elderly customer called for help. The stooped robber abruptly walked around the counter and stood next to Sophia. She had already opened the cash register, and her eyes were shining with tears. "Please don't do anything bad," she whispered, pulling out the bills. It seemed that just a little more and she would burst into tears from fear. The pale one, who remained nearby, waved his hand threateningly. "Faster, faster, we don't have time. Someone will show up soon." Keanu took another step closer. He saw Sophia almost dropping the money from her hands, and he realized that hesitating was dangerous. The robbers were tense. They could start shouting or becoming aggressive at any moment. He had to act cunningly. "Listen, friends," he began in a calm voice, trying to look as unperturbed as possible. "You'll take the money, but don't touch the girl, okay? It's not her fault. You don't want any extra problems, do you?" The stooped man raised his head. "What business is it of yours? Stay away, buddy. And anyway, I don't like your voice." Keanu swallowed, a mixture of adrenaline and determination flaring up inside him. Noticing that the pale guy actually had something flashing at his waist, he wondered if he had a real gun. He remembered all the firearms training he'd done for movies, but this was a real situation, no backup or stunts. "I'm here to buy groceries," Keanu explained, smiling deliberately calmly. "And I don't want anything bad to happen here. Let's do this the easy way, take what you want and go." The stooped man winced with displeasure. "Hey, who are you anyway?" At that moment, the pale man looked closely at Keanu's face. Not that he was a big movie buff, but something about the man seemed vaguely familiar to him. However, his head was all jumbled up with nerves and haste. He snorted. "Some smart guy. I told you to leave. Otherwise you'll regret it." But Keanu didn't move. The seconds ticked by, the tension mounting. Sophia, handing over a few bills to the hunched man, tried to calm herself, but her hands were shaking. The elderly shopper in the far corner was still standing, pressed against the bread rack, and trying to dial 911 in a whisper. "I'm not leaving until I'm sure the girl is not in any danger," Keanu said softly but firmly. Pale grinned, quickly pulled out a knife that was hidden in the folds of his jacket, and pointed it threateningly at Keanu. "Oh, you impudent fellow! Now let's see how cool you are." Sophia squealed in horror, and the old woman hiding behind the rack almost dropped her phone. It seemed like everything was heading for a tragic end. But Keanu kept his composure, figured that this guy wasn't holding the knife very confidently, and he himself could try to disarm him with a quick movement, while the hunched one was busy with the cash register. The situation was heating up. The hunchback had already received part of the money. But he kept glancing sideways at Keanu, who continued to stand on the way out. The pale one held the knife, pointing the tip at the chest of the uninvited hero. The tense pause could have been resolved in any way. "Okay, brother," the stooped one said quietly, turning to the pale one. "Let's get this over with and get out of here." Pale nodded and moved forward. At that moment, Keanu suddenly lunged forward, grabbed the hand that held the knife, twisting it at an angle, and twisted his body. It was a quick and precise move, honed over years of training. Even if it was for filming, the skill was real. Pale screamed in pain, the knife fell out, clanging on the floor. "What the?" he hissed, grimacing. Slouchy, seeing that his partner had lost control, let go of the cash register and rushed at Keanu. But Keanu, sensing his approach, turned around and blocked his blow with a short push of his elbow. Slouchy recoiled, clutching his stomach, and Keanu quickly kicked the knife away so that the bandits could not reach it. "Hold on!" the stooped man shouted at the pale one, trying to attack again. Keanu dodged, delivered a couple of precise blows, one to the shoulder, the other to the rib. The man coughed, staggered, and fell to his knees. Sophia couldn't believe her eyes. Who would have thought that an ordinary visitor, and some modest guy at that, would be so fast and skillful? Even the elderly customer looked out from behind the rack, shocked by the sight. Pale tried to jump back, but his hand hurt from the grab. He screamed and fell to his knees next to his partner. Keanu, breathing heavily, stood between them and the exit. "You're in bad shape, guys. You should have just taken the money and left, but you chose to cause panic and attack people." The bandits, realizing that Keanu had the situation under control, froze, not knowing what to say. Suddenly, the wail of sirens was heard. The elderly woman said quietly with relief, "I called the police. They are already here." Sophia leaned back against the wall, trying to catch her breath. The knife was lying a meter away from her, and the two robbers no longer looked menacing. Curled up on the floor, they were breathing heavily and looking at Keanu's silhouette with a spark of fear in their eyes. "Thank you," was all she could whisper, looking at Keanu. He looked down, nodded, as if embarrassed. He didn't want fame, but he knew he had done what he had to. A couple of minutes later, a couple of police officers burst into the store, holding their guns at the ready. Seeing that the two men were lying on the floor and Keanu was in control of the situation, they hurried to restrain the criminals and handcuff them. Sophia, shaking, gave a short statement, explaining that these people wanted to rob the cash register and threatened her with a knife. The elderly woman confirmed how it all began. One of the officers approached Keanu. "Thanks for your help, sir. But you took a risk. And anyway, you're that Keanu Reeves?" Sophia heard this phrase belatedly. Her eyes widened. "What is this really?" She turned her gaze to Keanu, who was slightly embarrassed, adjusted his cap. "Yes, it's me. But I hope it's not a problem?" The policeman chuckled. "No problem, just surprised. And grateful. You saved the situation we could have suffered." When all was quiet and the criminals were led away to the patrol car, the shop filled with a relieved noise. Sophia approached Keanu, not knowing how to express her gratitude. "I don't even understand. Are you Keanu Reeves? I didn't recognize you at first. Forgive me. And thank you for standing up for me. If it weren't for you..." She almost burst into tears, realizing how tragic it could have ended. Keanu took her shoulder in a friendly manner. "Everything is fine. I'm glad I was able to help. It's not your fault that you didn't recognize me. I often try to remain inconspicuous. I hope you weren't hurt?" "No, I was just very scared." She nodded. "But thank you, you literally saved my life." An elderly customer came up and also expressed gratitude. "If it weren't for you, young man. And who would have thought that you were that very actor?" Keanu smiled slightly, trying not to blow the situation out of proportion. He didn't want the press to be inundated with material about his feat, but he understood that the truth could come out. He turned to Sophia. "If necessary, I will stay and give the police a witness statement." Sophia nodded, and the officer confirmed. "Yes, it will be necessary." At the same time, other law enforcement officers were already arriving, taking pictures, collecting evidence. Keanu, a little nervous, recounted everything he saw, mentioning how he took the knife from the pale man without causing him serious injuries. The police were pleased that everything went without bloodshed and victims. The robbers, feeling defeated, sat silently in the police car. After a while, a half-asleep calm descended on the store. The officers drove away, carrying the criminals. The customers gradually returned to their business. Sophia was still at the cash register, recovering from the stress. Keanu, having finished talking to the police, slowly headed for the exit, holding in his hands the same apples and water for which he initially came. Wait! Sophia called out to him. He turned around. Yes? She took out her change and another lollipop from the cash register, smiling nervously. The change for your purchases. And here, take at least this as a token of my gratitude. She held out the lollipop. Of course, it's so little. Keanu was touched by her gesture. He could have refused without thinking, but he realized that it was important to her to thank her in some way. Taking the change and the lollipop, he smiled. Thank you? Hang in there. If you need me, I'm here, he said, meaning that he often visits this city. And be strong, let this day be the beginning of something good, not bad. Sophia nodded, thinking that now she definitely had something to tell her relatives, friends, and colleagues. After all, it's not every day that Keanu Reeves comes to you and saves you from an armed robbery. The door creaked again, letting Keanu out into the sunny street. He breathed in the warm air and felt grateful that he had managed to be in the right place at the right time to save someone's life. He might have had some big heroic roles in movies, but today the real world demanded the same determination and fortitude from him. As he walked back to the car, he knew that this episode would always remain in his memory, the moment when a simple trip to the store turned into a real feat, proving that humanity and courage were inseparable from him, no matter who he was on screen.